They call him coach, commentary coach. It is Brad Baker. He also has spent many years in live production in content. Excuse me. Sorry, one more time.
It's okay.
Yeah. They call him coach, commentary coach. It is Brad Baker. He has worked many years in live production and is a content executive. And he joins me on the Honor Something podcast. I'm Bryan Fenley. This is a sports media podcast that also focuses on the personal sides of my guests. So we're going to have a multi-dimensional look at you, Brad. And with all you do
Ooh.
in commentary coaching, I expect to hear how I'm doing throughout this interview, if I'm hitting your standards or not. So putting you on the spot a little bit. Appreciate you being a part of this.
No, listen, your intro was above average. I think if we had a couple more takes, I think you've got a better one in you. But that was good. That was a good cold start.
I want to ask you as we get this interview underway, I'm going to be asking you how I'm doing as an interviewer here. So this is part featuring you, but this is also having fun bantering with you about how I'm doing just as a playful add-on. But when you think about creativity and unleashing that, I know that over the course of your career, you focused a lot on harnessing that and finding the right ways to express that in a broadcast. How, for you, have you gotten most in touch with your inner creative self?
I have always been a creative, going back to when I was a child and doing musical theater, um, and then into my teens and kind of finding film and cinema. Um, and that sort of storytelling aspect was my original into being creative. Outside of that, it's really just about the ideas, man. Depending on what story needs to be told, who the characters are. I just spend a lot of time trying to find the right idea, the right voice for that story, and then gather the greatest group of artists I can together and go tell it.
With you, what is art? How would you define that and how it relates to you overall?
It's a really big question, and it probably deserves a bigger answer than we can give here. Um, let's talk relative to sports. So I really do think, as somebody who studies a lot of commentators, watches a lot of broadcasts, there is an art to this, and it's a bit silly to say in the grand scheme of things, right? Because we're not changing anybody's lives here. We're not curing cancer. For most people, this is an escapism that they enjoy in the evenings or on a weekend afternoon. That said, there's a lot of money behind it. There's a lot of fan avidity into it. The escapism that people are partaking in might be the most important hour, couple hours of their week. We owe it to the audience to do the best possible thing we can. And is the audience always going to know that the bump back from break wasn't as tight as it could be, or didn't have the best shots that the game had captured already? Maybe not. But when it does happen, it elicits this emotion on a much deeper level than we appreciate as just sort of fans or muggles, as I like to say for people not in the broadcast space. So I think it is an art in that, just like any other art, it has to be studied, it has to be appreciated, it's got to be criticized. You've got to ask tough questions, and you've got to be willing to dig deeper inside yourself to work a little bit harder in order to accomplish this thing. So yeah, I do take it seriously. I do look at it like an art form, and approach it with that perspective.
I find that there is this inner struggle between there is the perfectionist in sports media who, as a producer or a director, they, as you said, they want the timing to be right, going into breaks, going out. They want everything to be hit at the right time. But you also have humans, and humans are inherently imperfect as broadcasters. So, how do you wage this back and forth, this teeter totter of what is comforting for you as a producer to know that there's always going to be that human element that people are drawn to, but there's also this desire to want things to be procedurally correct, timing in what it needs to be, and everybody hits the topics and they get out on the right time as far as tag outs and out cues and coming in from breaks.
There's like a lot of art, there's structure there. Um, you've got your breaks you have to hit, you've got the content you're required to get in. As things go in the game, you have to identify and be able to call players or bring up packages, recall information, use your boards, use your notes. So there's structure there. But within this structure, what makes it beautiful is that human element, is that ability to have those imperfections that make it perfect. The number of times that a commentator has just said something offhand, not not what you were expecting in the moment, those are the moments that you remember. Those are the moments that you laugh at. Those are the moments where you're connecting to the commentator and getting that human connection. Because yeah, we're watching a broadcast, and to your point, there's these things that you structurally want to get correct. But what's more important than any of that, what's more important than 100 miss punches in the game by the TD is the story and what's happening in front of us, and using our tools as broadcasters to elevate that moment because we're in a unique position. If you go to the game and you watch it, you're not getting the commentating, you're not getting the packages, you're not getting replay. It's a different experience. It's a great experience. You kind of can't beat being there in person and getting that feeling. When you watch it on television, we have an opportunity to not only give you the experience of being there, but elevate it, and elevate it from what we're doing from a storytelling aspect. So there's that structure, just like there is in art. We're using paintbrushes, paint, a camera for cinema, whatever the art form is. We've got our tools, we've got our structure. Now we can use our human element, what we bring to the process inside of those constraints.
How do you like to tell that story, and what does that look like when you try to harness and elevate it in a broadcast?
It's you prep as much as possible. I mean, that's really all you can do is prep as much as possible. Um, in the days where I would produce and or direct, it was running through every possible situation in my head, what that looks like playing it literally in my head, and then figuring out, all right, what were the cameras I was cutting to in my head, to capture that moment for broadcasters. I usually try to coach them to do the same thing. Just play those goals in your head. Play that big save, that big miss, that championship, that final whistle. What is it you're hearing? What do you want to say? What do you want to say to the audience? If you're in the audience, what do you want to be told?
Mhm.
And that sort of dictates the content for me. Outside of that, I'm not somebody who sits down with a commentator and asks them to script out my words, or do it exactly how I'm describing it. You're bringing your life experience and your personality and your skills to it. That's what, as a commentator, I want to harness and try to draw out. So, for particular commentators, knowing how they call a game, I might work with that, as opposed to trying to shoehorn it the other way.
That's a great point. And when you are in the midst of a game, you're always going to have at some point that climactic moment, that crescendo, and so much pressure, I would think, from your perspective, being in the truck, is are you capturing it in the best way possible? Which, when that happens, when that moment happens, what are you telling the commentator, or what are you not telling the commentator as far as not necessarily micromanaging them and telling them necessarily what to say, but when to lay out, when to hit what you need to hit to, and then get out and then pan the crowd and harness the celebration and let the emotion take over.
We're going to do all that ahead of time. I'm not going to do that in the moment in the truck unless it's become a situation where I have to force myself in. There's nothing I believe there's nothing anybody's going to say in the moment that's going to make it better. Um, so me getting in your ear, me trying to remind you of something, all that's going to do is clog you, right? I want you free. I want you experiencing the moment because as a commentator, your job is to experience it as a fan and then use your skills as a broadcaster to then elevate it above just being a fan loving moment. Um, Me getting in your ears is just going to distract and get away from that. It has to be real, it has to be organic, and we're going to figure out ahead of time how to allow that to happen. So on goals, I kind of have my machination that I like. Um, Other commentators have it, they want to do it their way. We're going to figure all that out ahead of time so that in the moment, again, this is pre-production, this is planning, this is thinking ahead. It's we don't have to think about it. We just have to execute. I don't want to have to think in the moment. I just want to have to execute. And that's the same for the broadcasters. I don't want you having to think about what you need to do in that moment. I just want the words to come out.
When do you want the words to not come out at a certain time in the broadcast?
When your words cannot elevate the moment. I mean, it, it's sort of stupid to oversimplify it that way, but if when you've got that mic on, if and the words are coming into you, if the words aren't there that you feel are going to raise the moment and make it bigger than it is, don't say anything. Just lay out. It's fine to lay out. That's, I think a lot of commentators think they get paid by the word.
Yes.
And this is particularly troubling in some of the sports where laying out elevates the broadcast. I'm thinking um, baseball, sometimes basketball, definitely soccer. But it's there's going to be times where you're laying out to just let it breathe. And then there's times where you're laying out because you have nothing that you can add to the moment. In either case, laying out is okay. If you don't speak for 30 seconds to a minute, there should be no panic from anybody because I'm trusting you that you don't have anything that is going to add to the moment. So, as a producer director in that instance, it's your responsibility. And if I'm in that role, it's my creative responsibility to then tell the pictures visually or tell the story visually. Um, but on the broadcast side, on the commentator side, I'd actually like to see more commentators laying out more often.
So you get, let's just set up a scene here. So let's say it's the World Cup, it's the finals, comes down to penalty kicks, and there's the defining penalty kick that the scored goal and X team wins. As soon as that ball goes in the net, ideally, what should the commentator do? Once we know who wins, what happens? Ideally.
Ideally, I maybe give one, two, three sentences that are not describing action, that are not describing the pictures, but that are describing the emotion, that are telling the story. And then if if the pictures are telling the story, stop. What are you going to say? That's going to add to that. Um, and then once the moment starts to, we talk about that crescendo, once the decrescendo starts, now you can come back in and start bringing your words to tell the story, continue the story. But I think in that moment, um, there's no words that are going to add to it. They may not bring it down. Your words may keep it up here, right? They may not bring it down, but they're not going to bring it up. And so it's a visual medium. Let's let the visuals take over at that point.
That's so well said. Brad Baker is with me. Commentarycoach.com is where you can check out his work. I encourage all of you to do that. What's it been like making a website and getting the word out about all that?
Difficult. um, yeah, I mean, it started. It's a bit odd because now I'm just essentially charging for something that I was already doing. Um, I mean, for years and years since essentially since 2020, and I sort of got out of sports as a full-time job. Um, this is what I do every weekend. I'm going to be watching the sports. I'm going to be watching the games. Almost assuredly, somebody I know is going to be a commentator. And I'm making notes. I'm making little mental notes. Um, Sometimes I even text people at halftime, post game. And sometimes people even say to me like, "Hey, I'm doing whatever game Saturday night. I'm really feeling like I haven't gotten feedback in a long time. Would you mind giving me some feedback?" And then yeah, I'll pull the notebook out and we'll start making some more in-depth notes. Now I'm just doing that on a more formal basis. But yeah, kind of getting it started, getting the word out is difficult because you're in such a niche area. Um, but it's building slowly, and for me, I don't really care if I get to work with the Jim Nances of the world or somebody who's just coming out of college and looking for their first gig. What I care about is continuing to grow the art of the broadcast, continuing to grow the art of the commentator. And no matter what story is being told on what platform, I want it to be the best. I want it to be the best that it can be. So venue, platform, I'm agnostic. I'm really just about taking this seriously and working with other people who want to take it seriously.
I had this vision and this image of you just watching sports all day with a notepad. Like, and even if you don't know, I mean, and you know a lot of people in the industry, but even if you don't know, let's say a particular game and a broadcaster, like, hey, if they want advice, I'm already taking notes anyway. Like, how off
Dude,
am I in
I've been
thinking that?
saying that about Tom Brady. I've been saying that about Tom. Tom, if you're watching, give me a call. Um, because there's so many people out there that are doing this, that are getting into it, and especially on a really high profile level. Um, Maybe nepotism isn't the right word, but they're sort of being granted these positions based on stature of something else, on other accomplishments. And knowing Tom Brady's work ethic, I'm thinking back to Tony Romo 7, 8 years ago when he was getting into this. Um, they're putting in the hours, they're working. I know they're working, but you're trying to take something that people have been working at for 10, 15, 20 years and condense your prep time into a few weeks, a few months. That's intense. That's asking a lot. And when you're then going onto a platform like international NFL broadcasts, where you're talking hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars involved in these rights fees and sponsorships and people's jobs on the crew. I mean, this is a huge global operation, money changing hands everywhere with these broadcasts. There's a responsibility there. And I know that they take it seriously and they're wanting to work hard. Who is giving them the feedback and the advice to help them get there? That I don't know. I don't know if that person exists in some of these corporations or networks. Um, but in my experience, it hasn't. And that's what I'm here to do.
In following your posts on Instagram and your feed, you've talked a lot about how hard it is to get that feedback from, say, a
Hmm.
broadcaster and asking it from a producer, because there's always that next event, and it's like, what's more important? Oh, I got to prepare for that next event, and then all of a sudden, a couple of weeks go by, and then the person that you're asking feedback for or on, they forgot about that event, and it's almost like, if even if you get to them then, they don't really remember because there's so many games and it's always looking ahead. So like you said, that's why people should come to you for that. Commentarycoach.com. Why do you think when they bring in, it doesn't necessarily need to be the NFL, but it can, when you've got high profile players, some are more natural, they're more gifted at taking on that analyst role than others. Why do you think that is? And how is it sometimes seemingly easier for some to make that transition than for others?
I think it just comes down to personality. Um, we could put a microphone in front of anybody and say, go describe what's happening in this game. Some people will just naturally have that storytelling ability. They'll have the right voice. It's like public speaking, right? Some people are good at it. Some people aren't. Some people are okay and interested and can work really hard to get better and become really great at it. And then some people are just rubbish and it's the way it is. Not everybody's going to be great at every single thing. I'm not the greatest producer and director on the planet. I know that. And I concede that role to the people that are. Um, this I am really good at. And I do think I'm one of the best at it. Um, and so this isn't something that every single person would be able to do. So I really think it just comes down to personality, personal ability, how much somebody's been involved in the media, been in front of media. Are you an offensive lineman who's done one media scrum your entire career? Or are you a quarterback who's doing a media scrum for an hour after practice every single day, having to go to charity events and, MC things? All these things happen over people's lives and careers that sort of put them in a more advantageous position to immediately be able to pick up commentating as opposed to somebody who has less media training. But I think a lot of it just comes down to personality as well and what your natural abilities are.
You're right. It's personality, what comes naturally. And sometimes what comes naturally is being comfortable in front of the camera. I can't tell you, and I'm sure that you've worked with a lot of athletes that have said this too, where they have played, performed, competed in front of thousands of people on site, millions of people watching. And I ask them about what that's like, and they talk about a calmness. Then you take me maybe doing a one-on-one interview with nobody watching in the back of a gym after a practice, and they get super nervous. I could never perform on a stage as an athlete with all those people watching. But then some, not all, but it's fascinating to me, Brad, that you take them out of something that they're not used to, and they get nervous when it's like you're already performing, but it isn't always an easy thing. It's there's a mental shift there, and I'm sure that you see that from people that you've worked with.
Yeah, I mean it is funny with those interviews, and I've seen the exact same thing, right? And the second the camera turns off, they're right back to talking and acting like a normal person.
Yeah.
Um, that's the biggest thing in all of this is confidence, right? It's the confidence because I used to say comfortability, but comfortability just builds the confidence. So it's really just confidence. And if if you grabbed anybody and put a microphone in front of them, they're going to be better on the 100th time than they are on the first time, even if they're not into this. So for me, when I work with former athletes, commentators, anybody, that's what I'm trying to build is that confidence. I want you to feel so comfortable in your own voice, with looking into that lens, that nobody out there, that it's just how you are. You don't have to think about it. You can just do it. It's automatic. And that is when the personality comes out. That's when you start really getting the best parts of the storytelling, because the that sort of prefrontal cortex of the brain that's thinking, is the mic too close to my lips, and are my p's and my t's too loud? The producer's talking about this, I'm looking here, I'm looking at my boards, I'm trying to see this replay, I'm trying to listen to what my partner's talking about. All of that just becomes automatic and muscle memory, so that then all you're having to worry about is ingesting the game and telling the story outwardly.
I liken it to, with all of those different things happening at once, it's as if you're a quarterback, and when you're first going through your progressions, it looks like mass chaos. There's so much going
Right.
on, and your mind is just overload. It's sensory overload, as it can be when you're first getting into a broadcast. But what do they say? The more tape you look at, the more reps, the game slows down for the quarterback, and they're able to hit their receiver who's moving across the field, who's working that post route. And I think that happens in broadcasting too,
Yeah, this is no
where
different.
yeah, it's the exact same thing, and it comes down to, can you because these athletes, they have to be at their best, they have to have confidence. But is that confidence, can it be transferable from sport to broadcast? And like we've been talking about, sometimes it's easier for those to get into that headspace than others. You've done such a great job in reflecting on others as far as what they're doing as broadcasters. I now want to go into something about how you choose to self reflect. And part of that is revolving around meditation.
It
It,
is.
the love, the importance, the appreciation you have for meditation, how does that enhance your life?
So I practice a form of meditation called transcendental meditation. This is a meditation that was brought to the world in the 1950s by Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, um, who was the foremost scientist at the time of consciousness. And it's a meditation rooted in Vedic science that goes back 5,000 to 6,000 years. And it's the form of meditation that has been most scientifically proven to work. Um, I could go on. We could do a whole podcast just me talking about transcendental meditation. Um, but essentially, it's a form of meditation. It's a mantra based meditation, and you're using that mantra to bring the brain activity down, start experiencing a very deep level of rest, and then you're going to transcend the point of thought, the creation of thought. And when you do that, you're entering this unbounded world of pure consciousness. Think about everything that is something, right? Your microphone, my laptop, my AirPods, me, you. What are these things, right? What are they made of? So scientists started looking at this a few decades ago, and about 30 years ago, what they found was, we thought the atom was the smallest thing for the longest time, and then they split the atom open, and all this shit came pouring out. And what they found were these fields, magnetic fields, gravitational fields, and those fields, as they kept going deeper and deeper, they found it's all one field, and it's called the unified field. Everything that is a thing in the universe comes from the unified field. You do, the microphone, my AirPods, all comes from the unified field. And that's what we're accessing when we meditate. And it's from that unified field that you're gaining the deep rest. You're gaining the ability to expand your consciousness. If you think about, let's talk about commentating when I'm coaching somebody and giving them feedback. If you have this size consciousness, you're going to have that size understanding of it, of what I'm saying, and you're going to have that size ability to execute. But the more you expand your consciousness, that understanding grows. And you're able to not only understand it, but appreciate it, and then get us to appreciate it on a deeper level. Um, so yeah, I encourage people, if you're interested in meditation, I think it's a great way every day to get the noise out, bring yourself back inward, and give yourself that rest and that time that you deserve, and that your body deserves, so that you can be a better version of you.
I would gather that you could also be a better version of a broadcaster by doing this on a regular basis. And how do you see that potentially playing out?
Better version of anything. No, there's nobody who is going to start TM and become worse for it. Um, the science just doesn't say so. TM is backed by over 500 peer-reviewed, published scientific papers that show regular practice of TM. You have drops in cortisol, drops in epinephrine, drops in blood pressure. And of course, all of these are connected to our stress. So that chronic stress starts coming down. And you think about the things that chronic stress causes. Chronic stress is the number one killer of anything in the world. We're talking strokes, heart attacks, muscle issues, joint problems, brain fog. These are all
Inflammation.
things that inflammation, right? All of these are, it's just from stress. And if you're eliminating that stress through practice of daily meditation, um, everything you're going to be doing, everything, just me going to Costco this afternoon is going to be a better experience for me, a less stressful experience than if I didn't meditate.
That is fantastic. And that's why I love this podcast, because we're going to learn more about what really drives you, what's happening, the inner workings of your mind. And we really harness that. And that's a word that I've used a few times in this conversation, is harnessing, but we harness the power that is Brad Baker, in how he can transcend his own consciousness as simply a commentator and a coach in that format, and use the wisdom and the added level of consciousness to lead a better, more fulfilled life, purpose filled life, and how that actually can influence your role as a commentary coach. That's what all of this goes back to, helping you in all facets of your life. The meditation, I'm inspired by it. I'm all about it. Obviously the health benefits when it comes to mental health are huge. when it comes to that stuff, and I'm all for that. So I'm glad it's working for you. I know that people out there get into this TM stuff because it makes a big difference. It can make you a better broadcaster, it can make you a better worker in production. And I can tell you one thing as we wrap up this conversation, you get on with Brad Baker, you go to commentarycoach.com, he's going to make you a better broadcaster by what he has knowledge wise. There's so much knowledge there. It's almost like he doesn't know what to do with all of it. He is an anthology of wisdom in the broadcasting world. So I encourage everybody to go check that out. Great guys, Brad Baker. I'm Bryan Fenley. Brad, thanks so much for taking on this journey with me where we hit different layers of broadcasting, life in general, and made it a very interactive, immersive experience.
So as I say goodbye, Brian, I'm going to teach you something that we do in the Transcendental Meditation world. It's a Vedic. This is a Vedic thing. We say goodbye by saying Jai Guru Dev, and that is a Vedic way of saying appreciation to the teacher, appreciation to the person that just taught you a little bit of something. And I think every interaction in life is an opportunity to learn and take something from somebody else, even if it's the cashier at the market. There's an opportunity to interact there and take something away from it. So thank you for having me on. Thank you for the time. You're a great lad. I've really enjoyed following your career and getting to know you better. And take your dev.